Kyon, did something bad happen?
I told you already. Mr. Keiichi got sick and he's resting in his room. So we have to stay here, okay?
So, is Mikuto sick? Kyon, can we talk? Yuki, lock the door. And don't open it for anyone, no matter what. Got that? I understand. Do you think he was murdered?
That's what it looks like.
Oh, this is nuts. I never thought something like this would ever really happen.
But all you keep saying is how badly you wanted something mysterious to happen.
Well, yeah, because I never really thought it would happen.
A murder happens in a locked room on a deserted island in the middle of a typhoon. What are the chances we'd stumble onto something like that while on vacation? Then again, maybe this is happening because Haruhi wished for it to happen.
We're in some really big trouble, aren't we?
Right now, she looks like a mischievous little boy, worried about how an April Fool's joke went from bad to worse. I hate to say this, but as far as prime suspects go, Mr. Yutaka is front and center. No one knows where he is. It's like he just up and vanished.
Hey, wait a minute. Yesterday, Mikuto told me something. Don't let it hit the water! Nice! Here comes another one!
She saw them arguing?
That's what it looked like anyway. And last night, I overheard something. Remember? I went to the bathroom during the game. I was standing in the same spot.
Yeah, I'm in a hurry. Get my passport and traveler's checks ready, okay?
Now I know what that was about. I'll bet you anything that he was arranging his escape overseas.
But what about the sealed room? He wasn't trying to fake Mr. Keiichi's suicide, so what's the point in locking up the room like that?
I can't just stand here and not do anything. Come on, we're gonna go take a closer look in Mr. Keiichi's room.
I'm sorry. I called the police already, and they insisted that no one is allowed inside the room until they arrive on the island.
Did they say when they would get here?
I checked the forecast, and right now it looks like the weather will start clearing up by tomorrow afternoon. It's safe to assume that the police would arrive around then.
Was his door locked all night long?
I have no idea. When I saw that the door was closed, I knocked.
And that's it?
Mr. Keiichi keeps important work-related documents in there, and it was forbidden to open the door if he didn't answer it. He was very adamant about that.
So Mr. Keiichi and Mr. Yutaka didn't get along with each other?
I really wouldn't know anything about that. There are many things regarding those two with which I'm not familiar. You see, Miss Mori and myself have been employed here at the mansion for only 1 week.
Only a week?
Miss Mori and myself are working part-time as Mr. Keiichi's temporary maid and butler. Our contract with him was brief. It was to last a mere 2 weeks out of the summer.
So you two were just hired to work here and you never worked for him before this?
Precisely. As for the relationship between the two brothers, all I know is that Mr. Yutaka was an employee in Mr. Keiichi's company.
Something's not right. I've suddenly got a strange feeling about this.
Koizumi! What are you doing?
I was just having a look around the mansion. I can't find Mr. Yutaka anywhere. How about you?
I'm going outside to see if the boat's still there. I don't think you'll find the boat. What do you mean? Well, late last night, I noticed that Mr. Yutaka seemed as if he were in an awful hurry. I saw him heading for the front entrance.
Then, are you implying that Mr. Yutaka took the boat and left the island?
I'm not positive that's what happened, no. But that was the last time I saw Mr. Yutaka. About what time? I believe it was around 1 o'clock in the morning.
One wrong step and we'll both fall off the cliff. Oh well, even if we fall, when I'm with her, I feel like my chances for survival are pretty good.
Kyon, do you see that?
The boat's gone, so Mr. Yutaka did it after all. Gray skies and black seas. It reminds me of being inside a closed space. There's no way I'd ever get used to a monochromatic world like this.
Kyon!
Huh?
Someone's there! See? Just past the rocks! I wonder if somebody else is out there looking. Or maybe that's the...
No, wait! Hey, are you sure you saw him come down this way?
He had to! This is the only path! Kyon! 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 Are you alright? Are you alive?
Yeah, I guess I'm okay.
Looks like we're in a tough spot.
Yeah. I don't think we can make it back to the path.
Hey, over there!
Fortunately, it was warm inside the cave. Was it just the Earth's heat? Or was there an underground hot spring nearby?
I know I saw a shadow back there.
You sure it was even a person? I mean, Maybe it was something else.
No way. I saw what I saw. Although, I was thinking... Hey, Kyon, do you really think that Mr. Yutaka killed Mr. Keiichi?
What are you getting at?
Well, I've just been thinking about everything. According to what Miss Mori said a little while ago, Mr. Yutaka left the island around 1 in the morning. When we found Mr. Keiichi's body, I touched him. He was still warm. You see what I'm getting at? His body was still warm. That means Mr. Keiichi was killed right before we found his body.
So what does that mean? Mr. Yutaka left the mansion at night in the middle of a typhoon, hid till morning, then stabbed Mr. Keiichi before splitting the island?
But I don't think that's how it happened. Look, even if Mr. Keiichi was killed an hour before we found him, that means someone should have seen or heard something. Remember, we were all awake and wandering around the place. Someone should have heard something. A sound, a scream.
Don't you think that's strange? I mean, you really think that Mr. Keiichi stayed alive for hours on end and managed to lock himself in his room after being stabbed? Think about it. If Mr. Yutaka wasn't the murderer, then why'd he run away?
Wait! I got it! Now I've got it. I know what happened in there. Are you even listening to me?
Yeah. Come on, then. Let's hear it.
I'm sure Mr. Yutaka's the one who stabbed Mr. Keiichi. Like you said, why else would he run away unless he was the guy that did it?
Yeah, that's true.
So Mr. Yutaka stabbed Mr. Keiichi, we know that. But how did it happen? I'm pretty sure it was an accident. They were arguing. Mr. Yutaka lost his temper, picked up the fruit knife, started waving it around, and bam! But the knife didn't go all the way through to Mr. Keiichi's heart. The notebook stopped the knife. It was stuck in him, but it wasn't fatal. Here's where it gets complicated. Mr. Keiichi went into shock and passed out right there on the spot. When that happened, Mr. Yutaka thought he'd killed his brother and ran. Now comes the tricky part. Mr. Keiichi, who wasn't dead, stayed unconscious throughout the night and came to the next morning. When he woke up, Mr. Keiichi was in a daze. He stood up, but his legs were a little wobbly. He remembered how his brother tried to kill him, so he staggered over to the door to lock himself in. This part's the most tragic of all. Mr. Keiichi, still dazed, tripped over his own feet and fell face down on the floor. The weight of his body pushed the knife up into his heart, and that's what caused Mr. Keiichi's death. That's how it happened.
Wait a minute. You honestly think it all went down that smoothly?
What are you gonna do? That's the way it happened. Unless you've got a better idea.
I'm sure that Mr. Yutaka would know if he really killed his brother or not. Besides, when we got to him, Mr. Keiichi was lying face up. If everything happened the way you said, we would have found Mr. Keiichi lying face down, not face up.
Well, that's true, but... No. No, wait! If that's how it really happened, then...
Hey, what's wrong?
Oh, nothing. I guess I wasn't thinking straight there for a second.
Hey! Can you hear me? You guys okay?
It looks like Haruhi's deduction has completely crumbled. But if that's the case, what really happened? Mr. Yutaka wasn't on the island when Mr. Keiichi died, which means that somebody else is the murderer here.
Which one should I eat?
Hey!
Joe, you scared me! Stop it!
Stealing food, eh?
I was hungry. You're mean. I'm sorry about that. I'll bring something up to your room right away. Hey, no fair! Someone got to eat their food before anyone else. Yes, it was Mr. Arakawa. He hasn't had a thing to eat since this morning, so I delivered his meal ahead of everyone else.
You always find a way to embarrass me, don't you?
Aww.
Huh?
Is something wrong? Yuki, it's me! Open the door! I was told to not open the door for anyone. But it's okay now! Open up! Then I would be opening the door for someone. I was told not to open it for anyone.
I take it Miss Asahina's still unconscious in there.
I'd assume she is, otherwise we'd hear her.
Yuki, when I said anyone, I meant anyone who isn't a member of the SOS Brigade. I mean, we're all members, right? That is not what I was told. I was given an order to lock this door, and under no circumstances was I to open it for anyone. But Yuki, you didn't say anything when I left the room a little while ago. My orders did not specify the door being opened from inside this room.
Hey, Nagato. As of right now, Haruhi's order has been retracted. If you want, I'll just give you a new order. Look, my sister's out here. Please open the door.
Jeez, you don't have to be so literal all the time.
Maybe that was Nagato's way of playing a joke on us. Come on, Nagato. No expression, not even a blush. Your face never changes. You can't be serious all the time, can you?
Thanks, Yuki.
What do you think we should do now? Do you want to keep trying to find the answers to this mystery?
Not anymore. I guess I'm not the great detective I thought I was. Oh well, we'll let the police handle this one.
I see. So that's what you were talking about in the cave.
But something's strange. If she really wanted to play the detective so much, why did she just suddenly drop the whole thing like that?
I think I can understand that. Or at least where she's coming from. Would you like to hear my theory about it?
Yeah, I'm all ears.
Up to a certain point, Miss Suzumiya's deductions are correct, but the last part of the mystery is where she got it wrong. Mr. Keiichi was stabbed by Mr. Yutaka. However, he didn't die right away. Mr. Yutaka thought he killed him, so he fled. That's all correct. But Mr. Keiichi came to because of our knocking and shouts, and just before we tried opening the door, he staggered over, dazed, and locked it. And then... That was the moment the knife was pushed through the notebook and into Mr. Keiichi's body.
In other words, he was really killed.
By the people who rammed the door in. Basically, it was me, and it was you, and it was also Mr. Arakawa. I'm positive Miss Suzumiya figured all that out, and that's why she didn't say anything. She was protecting us. That's why she decided to keep the truth of this case to herself.
Your theory does make a lot of sense. But it's unfortunate you had to figure out the truth. All I have to do is keep you quiet, and this whole thing goes away. No one will ever know. Isn't that right?
Someone help me! Help me! Help me! It's Koizumi! I don't know who, but somebody stabbed him in the chest with a knife and he's dead!
What did you say? Impossible.
Come on! Follow me! Hurry! Hurry! I never thought you'd be such a badass.
Yeah, well, just keep your mouth shut and I won't have to kill you, too. Here's how it goes. Mr. Yutaka snuck back here and killed Koizumi. Only a killer knows their motive, right? So we say that we thought he seemed a little off. Yeah, he was acting weird. That'll be the story.
You think the police would actually buy that?
Yeah, but first we're gonna have to stab the corpse a few more times. It'll make Mr. Yutaka seem like a total psycho. Here goes! Wait!
Well, it looks like we've been found out. The game's over and we lost.
It's true. You beat us fair and square.
I'm sorry. I did it because Kyun told me to. Right! Now, Madam Haruhi, supernatural genius and number one sleuth, will reveal the results of her amazing detectiving!
She pat yourself on the back a little harder.
By now, it should be evident that the murder mystery was in fact an elaborate hoax designed and orchestrated by Koizumi, the Tomorrow Brothers, Mr. Arakawa, and Miss Mori. It was an impressive plot, especially with that red herring at the end.
Nice observation. It was all in fun, though. Surprise party with a twist, if you will.
I'm sure she knew what was up right from the start.
Hate to admit it, but in the beginning, you guys had me going. Until I got your fake solution where Mr. Keiichi was killed by Kyon and the boys busted through the door. But I realized something. If he really did collide with the door hard enough to push the knife through to his heart, then the door should have had blood or scratches on it. But there wasn't anything like that on the inside of the door.
I noticed that, thank you.
Okay, but you're talking about a really sturdy door there. I mean, I don't think that gives you very much evidence to suspect anything.
There were other fishy things as well, like the day when Koizumi first met Mr. Arakawa. He said, I haven't seen you in so long, but Mr. Arakawa said he only started working here a week ago, so it would have been the first time they met.
You are 100% correct.
I figured that one out, too.
There was also that time when we all ran up to Mr. Keiichi's room. You headed right down the hall to his door, right, Koizumi? So how could you have known which room was his? You told us this was the first time you'd ever been here, remember?
I can't believe it. Not just one, but two mistakes?
But that's not so strange. He could have found out which room was mine while the rest of you were off doing something else.
That is correct. However, the final clue was the empty plate Kyon saw in the kitchen. I'll let Kyon take this one, because I didn't actually see the plate.
I noticed that Mr. Keiichi is the only one on this island who eats with a fork and knife instead of chopsticks. Of course, there's the possibility that Mr. Arakawa eats with a fork and knife, too. But you see, the carrots remained on the plate untouched. That's when I realized that it was actually Mr. Keiichi's meal.
If you add it all up, there's only one conclusion to come to, and that is, there was never a murder to begin with. Mr. Keiichi was, is, and always has been alive! Wow!
I'm sure that in her mind, Haruhi's probably hearing applause that's 100 times bigger than that.
So, we've decided to turn the tables and put on a little show of our own. Then the fight I saw on the balcony that day was part of the act as well.
That's right.
And that late-night phone call was a fake, too. I was planning on letting the cat out of the bag at some point.
I'm still amazed you solved the mystery so quickly.
Well, all of your sleuthing caused their whole dastardly scheme to unravel. That was some nice detective work there.
Of course! It's elementary, my dear Watson. Elementary!
So all of this was something your organization cooked up?
Yes. The Tamadu brothers, Mr. Arakawa, and Miss Mori are all colleagues of mine.
I told you we'd have a
I
blast.
believed it would be better if Miss Suzumiya had a mystery to keep her mind free of any strange thoughts, if you know what I mean. Well, you do. Although, bringing your sister along was not a part of the plan.
I asked you at the beginning of this trip, and you told me that the organization didn't have anything to do with it.
Naturally. I mean, I couldn't tell you the truth about their involvement right then. If you don't mind me asking, when did you catch on to our scheme?
To tell you the truth, I knew about it right from the beginning.
Indeed.
An incident like this could never happen. Because there's no way that Haruhi would ever really wish for someone to be murdered. That's just how she is.
Then you really trust Miss Suzumiya, don't you?
And there's one more thing that I want to know. Haruhi said she saw a shadow. You had something to do with that, right?
I don't know anything about that. I'm telling the truth. The mystery's solved, so there's no reason for me to keep acting.
Well, she saw something. What do you think it was? Can't be.
Apparently, Miss Suzumiya wished for a murderer that wasn't one of us, and that was probably the shadow.
But if it was something Haruhi wished for that came to life, then... that means there's some kind of horrible something lurking on that island right now. Nah, it was probably just the storm that was making Haruhi see things.